More American than apple pie. That's quite a way to describe the NFL, isn't it? Mark Leibovich used that phrase.
It really is. Captures that sense of cultural dominance.
But you look at the headlines, player safety concerns, the league getting pulled into political fights. It makes you wonder, right, how stable is this giant, really?
Exactly. And that's what we want to get into today, using Leibovich's book, Big Game, The NFL in Dangerous Times, as our guide.
He got incredible access, didn't he? Between, 2014 and 2018, owners, players, the league office.
Unprecedented access, yeah. And what's fascinating is his perspective. He's a lifelong fan, but also a very sharp political journalist, so he sees both sides.
The passion and the power structures.
Precisely. And our exploration today, it's a bit like the kind of analysis you might find on, say, the YouTube channel Mindful Moments.
Yeah. They do great work breaking down complex topics from books.
Right. The aim is similar to go beyond the surface, encourage some reflection, some critical thinking about this huge force in American life.
So it's not just about the scores or the highlights.
Not at all. It's about the money, the power dynamics, and how this national obsession is, changing.
Leibovich talks about this idea of peak football during the time he was reporting, the absolute height of its power, culturally and financially.
Peak football. But even then, at that peak, he saw these threats starting to emerge. Big ones.
What stood out to you as the most serious, the existential threats he mentions?
Well, it's the combination, I think. You had the growing, unavoidable awareness about concussions and head trauma, the long-term effects.
He calls it the buzzkill that makes enjoying the game harder.
Exactly. That awareness was seeping in. And at the same time, you had the cultural landscape shifting, becoming more polarized.
And the NFL got drawn right into that. Player protests, for instance.
Right. So it wasn't just one thing. It was player safety, political controversy, leadership challenges, all bubbling up simultaneously. It put the league under immense pressure.
Leibovich gives us some pretty vivid portraits of the team owners. He calls them a billionaire boys club.
He definitely does, with, as he puts it, enlarged ego, delusion, and prostate, which is quite the description.
It certainly paints a picture. That story about Jerry Jones on his private bus.
Oh, yeah, with the high-end scotch and that very strange comment about selling shoes.
Right. It's not just about the wealth. It's about the personalities, the eccentricities, the sheer force of will shaping the league.
These aren't just passive investors. They are powerful figures, often with very specific, very personal ways of operating. And that deeply affects the league's culture.
But he does offer a contrast, doesn't he, with the late Dan Rooney of the Steelers?
Yes, and that's important. He portrays Rooney as genuinely modest, unassuming, a different kind of influence.
The detail about his lunch meetings always involving a tray, it suggests a certain practicality, maybe?
Perhaps. It certainly highlights that the ownership group isn't just one monolithic block. There's diversity there, different styles, different values, even within that very elite circle. Leibovich captures that nuance well.
Then there's the whole section on Tom Brady and the Patriots dynasty. It apparently started with Leibovich getting an unexpected callback from Brady.
Yeah, back in 2014. And his timing was, perfect looking back. He was embedded during Super Bowl wins, losses.
I mean, Deflategate happened right in the middle of his reporting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Leibovich offers a really interesting perspective on that, suggesting the media frenzy was maybe way out of proportion to the actual substance of the scandal.
He focuses more on the dynasty itself, right? The dynamic between Brady, Coach Belichick, and owner Robert Kraft.
He calls them the most ruthlessly efficient and polarizing sports dynasty of the modern NFL. And you also get a sense of Brady's father, who Leibovich describes as a winningly unfiltered defender of his son. It's a complex picture of success and controversy.
And trying to manage all these egos and controversies, Commissioner Roger Goodell, Leibovich calls him cordially despised.
Which really sums up the tightrope he walks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Cordially despised.
He's dealing with Deflategate, domestic violence cases coming to light, the player protests during the anthem.
Constantly navigating crises. Leibovich's reporting shows just how difficult that job is, trying to appease the owners, manage the players' union, handle public perception, deal with sponsors.
It seems like an almost impossible balancing act.
It really does. It highlights the immense pressure and the kind of no-win scenarios that seem inherent in leading such a high-profile and often contentious league.
Leibovich keeps coming back to this idea of the NFL as a reflection of America. More American than apple pie. How does his political reporting background shape that view?
It's absolutely key. He doesn't see the NFL in isolation. He sees the power plays, the personalities, the money, the public relations spin.
And draws parallels to Washington, D.C.
Very much so. He describes both as playgrounds for rich and overgrown children at times. He analyzes the NFL's power structures with that same critical eye he uses for politics.
So when the player protests blew up, especially during the Trump presidency, he saw it as
an inevitable collision. The NFL, this hugely visible cultural force, running straight into America's culture wars. His reporting describes that collision, the different sides, the reactions, but importantly, it doesn't really take a side itself. It observes.
It's descriptive rather than prescriptive.
Exactly. He's showing you the dynamics at play.
And alongside all this drama, there's the sheer business of the NFL. Exploding revenues, fancy new stadiums.
Billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Deluxe stadiums, changing city skylines. The league is also very focused on rules compliance, maintaining that image of integrity.
But contrasted with the human cost, right? The physical toll on the players.
Absolutely. That dark humor phrase players use. NFL stands for not for long. It's brutal.
Leibovich mentions seeing Earl Campbell.
Right. The legendary running back appearing with a walker.
Yeah.
Bearing the physical price of the game so visibly. It's a sobering counterpoint to the glamour and the money.
And that almost unbelievable story about the Buffalo Bills player who just retired at halftime.
Yeah. Just walked away mid-game. It speaks volumes about the psychological pressures, too, not just the physical ones.
It's this constant tension. Leibovich captures the glittering success and the harsh realities beneath it.
That's the core of it. The immense success built on, well, a very demanding, sometimes dangerous foundation.
You know, thinking back to mindful moments and some of our own past discussions, the goal is always to unpack these complex systems.
Definitely. To give you, the listener, a deeper framework for understanding these big forces, whether it's tech or politics, or in this case, the business and culture of the NFL.
And Leibovich's book certainly provides that deeper look at the league. It moves past the usual sports talk.
It really does. It gets into the engine room, so to speak.
So if we pull back and look at Leibovich's whole account, this league at its absolute peak, but facing serious, serious challenges, what's the big takeaway for you about where the NFL is headed?
Well, Leibovich ends on a really thought-provoking note. He basically says, look, pro football, it might not be the sport America needs, but it's definitely the sport America deserves.
Wow. That's quite a statement. The sport it deserves.
It makes you stop and think, doesn't it? And it really puts a question back to you, listening right now. Given everything we've talked about, the power, the money, the controversies, the physical cost, what does America need from its most dominant sport?
And maybe is the NFL, as it's currently structured and operates, capable of being that sport?
That's the lingering question Leibovich leaves us with.
Definitely something to chew on. If this conversation has got you thinking, we hope you'll subscribe so you don't miss future analyses like this.
And please share it with anyone else you think might find this perspective on the NFL interesting.
If you want to go even deeper, Mark Leibovich's Big Game is a fascinating read. We'll put a link where you can find it in our show notes.
And as always, we encourage you to keep thinking critically about the information you consume, about the forces shaping the world around you.
Thanks for joining us.